Shalom. Today we're going to speak about a few things. Let's start with the crocodiles. Because when you investigate, you realize that Jewish translators as well as Christian translators have a big problem into translating the word tanin in Hebrew, which is a crocodile, with the word crocodile. So they replace it with like sea monster, with whales, jackals, serpents, and you know what? Even dragons. Can you imagine? A dragon is like a fictional character. It's not even, doesn't exist, never did exist. So, anyways, they have a big problem with translating that word crocodile. Only the Jewish translators at one point did translate that word correctly, but only in the place where they had no other choice to do so. Because in Ezekiel, Pharaoh is being mentioned as being a great crocodile, evolving into the Nile. So it would have been hard for them to place like a whale over there, or a sea monster, or a dragon. They would have lost total credibility if they had done that. So it's clear that the translators don't want you to see the word crocodile in the Torah. Jewish translators and Christian translators made great efforts in order to conceal that word. Now we have to ask ourselves why. What's the point? So we cannot now analyze all the 30 places where the word crocodile is being mentioned in the Torah, but let's analyze just the first place. In the creation, it is clearly written that the Lord God did create the great crocodiles. Tadinim in Hebrew is crocodiles. Now, the Christian version of the Bible translates that word by the big whales. And the Jewish versions of the Jewish translations in English of the text, translate that word with sea monsters. So when you think about it, sea monsters can be all over the place in the world. Can be in the north, in the all kinds of oceans, countries. And so can the whales. There are whales all over the world. Now, crocodiles would link the creation to Egypt, to the Nile, because crocodiles usually are to be found in the Nile. So maybe the point here for them is to keep you from understanding that the creation, of the world actually happened in the Nile, in Egypt, and that all life and everything started 5,700 years ago in that place we know today as Egypt. Now, that might sound crazy for, a lot of you guys, but when you think about it and when you keep on investigating, there are a couple of verses that confirm that. First of all, remember Lot, when Lot leaves Abraham and takes a look at the, Jordan Valley, and it is written over there that the Jordan Valley, before that, God, just burned everything there, looked like God's garden, like the land of Egypt, textually written like this. So this verse also links the land of Egypt to God's garden, which apparently might refer to the Eden garden. You understand? Now there is a second verse that most people don't know, is that at one point God will say that Egypt is his people and that Israel is his inheritance. And this is also, pointing to the fact that at one point Egypt was not that bad. Actually, it became bad with Pharaoh. Before Pharaoh appeared, in the picture, Egypt was actually a good country, a rich country, it was a good country, not a bad country at all. Now, my point is just to tell you that the translator's objective might be to keep you from making the connection between the creation and Egypt. They don't want you to understand that maybe Egypt was the place, where everything started like 5,700 years ago, because it had to start somewhere, you understand? So I believe this is what they are hiding. And when you analyze all the other points, everything goes in that direction. They're trying to keep you from linking that country with the creation. And there's one more thing. Do you remember when Moses and Aaron came in front of Pharaoh and they threw their sticks on the ground and they became serpents? Well, over there, the word is crocodiles. The stick of Aaron, turned into a crocodile. And also God says it will turn into a crocodile. Now, they're hiding that word with the word serpent. Now, the reason why they are still hiding, that word crocodile, but now, of course, with the word serpent, because they couldn't use the word whales or sea monsters, it wouldn't be like appropriate, due to the context, is, we believe, also to hide the connection between that symbolic gesture and the creation. Because when we analyze the 10 plagues of Egypt, we can clearly see that there is a link with the 10 steps of the creation. The first one being the crocodiles, because the first animals being created are mentioned as being the crocodiles. So it starts with the crocodiles. You understand? So we don't want to just develop all this now, we have no time, but just to reinforce the fact that maybe the word crocodile that places, the text in Egypt all the time, it is what they want to hide from people. They don't want you to understand, the importance of that place wherever, the crocodiles are being mentioned in the Torah. Okay, now about the knife that Abraham took in order to slaughter Yitzhak, his son. That knife is called Ameachelet. That comes from the word ma'achal in Hebrew, which is like food, and the word le'chol, which is to eat. So out of this word, the text wants you to deduct that the function of that knife is to eat the flesh, not just to cut it. Now, when you eat something, what do? You make that thing disappear. So again, the function of that knife is to make the flesh disappear, not just to cut, but to cut off the flesh. Out of this, we understand that this is a emasculation knife. That means made to emasculate, castrate, people. And at the time, it was a big thing. It was a big, big thing going on in Canaan. They used to emasculate boys like crazy. But we don't want to get into this and what it means and all that. The thing is that knife was to emasculate Yitzhak. Now, there is, in Judaism, a midrash, that means like a story that is, mentioned by our scholars about the fact that just before, the day before, I believe, that God, asked Abraham to go and do that, there was an argument between Ishmael and Yitzhak. And Ishmael used to, was saying to Yitzhak that is in fact the true, elder son of Abraham, because he was 13 years old when he was circumcised. But Yitzhak was only like 8 days. So he didn't even, decide anything. And he didn't even feel what, Ishmael felt, which is partially true. And then Yitzhak answered Ishmael that, you just gave like a little piece of your body, like a little tiny thing, tiny part of your body. But if God wanted me, to do so, I will really be willing to give my entire body to him. And this is the end of the story. So this also, helps us to understand that in fact, the sacrifice, of Yitzhak was about emasculating him, not slaughtering like this, but slaughtering him, down there. This is why the word for slaughtering in that passage is written with a defect. There is a letter vav missing. That means lishchot, is not written correctly in order for you to understand that it was not really about slaughtering the way we think. It's a different kind of slaughtering. Now, when we analyze the text also, you see that Abraham just grabbed the knife, but never shows the knife to Yitzhak. Because, of course, if he had shown the knife to Yitzhak, in an instant, Yitzhak would have understood that that knife was to emasculate, him and not, any other animal. Now, this very important passage has a very, very deep meaning. There are very big things to understand over there, but we cannot develop now this today. So we're gonna go on. Okay. Now the third thing about Joseph being the high priest of Egypt. The word Av in Hebrew, which is mentioned over there, is father in Hebrew. So when Joseph says, that God placed him a father for Pharaoh, is a title, just like the Pope is called also father. And his role is being that of a high priest. That means that Joseph was indeed the high priest and the king of Egypt. Because there's also something that you have to understand that the circles of Egyptology won't teach you, is that the king of Egypt was also the high priest of Egypt. He was controlling both the material and the spiritual, business, of the country. So this is important to understand. Now, knowing this, now you can understand why it is written that Joseph was 30 years old when he appeared in front of Pharaoh, when he became high priest. Why? Because remember that Jacob, made a garment, like a robe with like strips, when he was a kid. He gave him like that robe. But that robe actually refers to the robe that the high priest of Israel is wearing. Every time you check where Kutenet Pasim in Hebrew is written, it's linked to, the priesthood of Israel. Now, the thing is that the high priest of Israel starts his service at the age of 30. So by giving you that precision, that it was at the age of 30, exactly, that Joseph became the high priest of Egypt, it is just to tell you that at that very time, that very day that he was supposed to become the high priest of Israel, he became the high priest of Egypt. Okay, the fourth thing. Now about the doctors. The people that did mummify Jacob are called in the Torah Arofim, which is the doctors, not the physicians. But the translators don't want you to know that they are doctors for some reason, and they call them physicians. Now, a doctor is supposed to heal people, to know, medicine, and to fix people's health. So maybe they don't want you to know that maybe they could have managed to resuscitate Yaakov, or to find a way to keep him alive somehow, or maybe for another reason. But I know that they don't want you to know that they are doctors. Now, the thing is that it is not mentioned in the Torah that Jacob died. Never. It is known in Judaism that, Jacob did not die. So there's an angle here we have to understand. Now, there's also something else. At one point, God says, I am your doctor. And again, the translators came in and they said, no, God says, I am the one that heals you, which is, can be the same thing for you. But actually, if you take off the word doctor, it cuts off the link between those people mummifying and God. You understand? So what does that mean? Does that mean that God also mummifies? Well, somehow yes, because if the mummifying, people is like to keep them intact through time, to keep their body intact through time. Well, it's exactly what God did with Israel. He kept the people of Israel intact through time until now. He's a mummifier somehow. So there must be like deeper reasons, but this is what we got so far. We still have to dig this, but this is going to be for another time because it's too deep and it will take too long. So again, one more, mistranslation on purpose, from those translators. Okay, 5, about Joseph's death. So how do we know he was replaced into a coffin, which is a sarcophagus, in Egypt, and not just placed? because the word Vayasem is written with an extra letter Yud. Vayasem in Hebrew writes only with one Yud, Vav Yud, Sin and Mem. But here it's written with two Yuds, like a double letter, referring to a double action. Not just like placed, but placed and placed again, like replaced. You understand? So this is important to catch those subtleties that the translators, of course, won't highlight for you. That's for sure. So that's one. The thing is also you have to know that when we analyze the Torah, we understand that Joseph actually did not really die, that day, and that his name might have died, and he might have been forgotten from Egypt, but actually he didn't really die. But I don't want to kill you with all this. I'm not a doctor. I cannot bring you back to life, and I need you alive. So we have we have time to understand all this and to discuss all this. Whenever you want, we can make a podcast just about this. I have no problem. But for now, that's not the point. Okay, 6, about the Dome of Dome. That's my favorite one because that's a fresh one. It's a new one. Because it just came up to me when I've been asked a question in the Eddie Alencar's podcast, the last podcast, and they asked me, what does it say about the sun and the moon being placed in the dome or outside?
All right, so we do have flat Earth reconnaissance in the chat. Brother, if you can, just if you can look at the Torah, see the right definition when the Lord says he placed the sun, the moon in the firmament. In my Portuguese Bible, we understand that's inside, like in between a layer. And if you can look at your Torah and let us know.
And actually, I realized something I never realized, and I've read this like 1,000 times. And thanks to them, I realized something. And that actually, the word over there mentioned is actually translatable as the dome of the dome. So I'll explain you. In the beginning, God created the dome, all right, Arakia in Hebrew. And it is written that he called that dome, skies, Shamaim. Until that, there's no problem. But then the fourth day, it is said that he placed, or he gave, the two big luminaries into the sky's dome. Wait a second. Shamaim, it's the name of the dome. So now you're saying that he placed those two luminaries into the dome of the skies, or the dome of the dome, because skies is the name of the dome. So here, actually, it is translatable by the name, the dome of the dome. Meaning, there is a dome, and there is a dome of the dome. That means there is like another layer somehow, somewhere. I don't know where, I don't know how it works. We got to transfer this to the Flat Earth Scientific Department. That's not my department. But this is what's written in the Torah. So there is a layer, maybe many more layers. I don't know, but actually here it talks about like into the dome of the dome. That's not in the dome. It's not above the dome. It's in the dome of the dome. That means a layer that's above the dome. That forms also itself like a second dome. So that's the meaning. Now check it out about the eyes of God. You can see that in the video just before I put up like a picture of what they call the Eyes of Horus, an Egyptian god. You have the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Thoth, which represent the sun and the moon. That's the official version. I didn't even, check that deeply, but this is, the official version of what this means. But if that's true, and you take a look at that picture, you can see that maybe those that Eye of Ra actually represent the dome itself, because you can see that the sun or the moon is enclosed into like a layer, that above that layer there's another limit over there, and most importantly is that you have like two lines. You have one line going down, straight down, and another one going on the side and making like a turn like that. And that reminds me of what's written in the Torah about the sun, that it goes along the south and around the north. You understand? So maybe we got something there. We have to dig. It's not sure. It's fresh. So we have to keep on thinking about this, because that might be also a good thing for flat Earth, if we could understand that actually the Eye of Ra describes the dome. So that's for another time. I'll let you guys cook this, and we'll talk about this later on. Now, when you think about it, it's possible that the sun and the moon actually do represent the eyes of God, because those are the only two entities in the dome that are moving and actually are watching all over the place what's going on. Understand? So all this we have to demystify. We have to understand to know what it means. But I believe there is something there. There is something that that deserves attention. So I'll let you think about all this, and maybe something will come up out of this. Okay, now about the moon map. That verse was given to me by a friend of mine, Mordechai Cohen. The big guy, that I made a podcast with, on the food, on the, No UFO series, on the nutrition conspiracy. So that's the guy that told me, hey, Samuel, we have maybe like a verse, like, saying that, there is actually a moon map. And I double check and triple checked, and actually it sounds kosher. So that's a verse that actually might talk about the fact that the moon is indeed, showing a world, and it is the faithful witness of that world, in the skies. So again, it's still fresh, it's still new. So we have to find more, more clues, that point into that direction. But again, looks like, we got something on the, on the fishing pole. So we'll talk again. I'm sure we will talk again. And for now, thanks for your attention, and see you soon.